sensed a positive mood. I'm here to destroy. I'm sorry, but not even you could ruin my mood right now. Oh, we'll see about that. Why are you so happy anyway? It's been over a year since I started my channel, and it's hard to believe I reached hundreds, no, if not thousands of people. So what? I can make that in like a day by reacting to cat videos. Friggin' cats. It's not just about the subscribers or the views. It's about how awesome it is that there's people out there who share the same passion of game design as I do. It's about all the people I've talked to and all the friends I've made. It's been just such an amazing experience. It's just like how all these games I've played throughout my life had given me other experiences. I just wish there was a way I could share that experience with others. And let me guess, you're gonna make a SoberDose video about how gaining all this experience built some sort of character. You know, that's not such a bad idea. Gaining experience builds character. It's something of a clever saying that I try to keep in mind, but I'm not sure if I ever stated what exactly it means. Of course, there's this obvious allusion to role-playing games. I mean, it's kind of the theme I went with. But it's also an effective metaphor. Upon defeating any encounter, you're usually given experience. Get enough and you level up, and you find yourself stronger, faster, more intelligent, and able to deal with the threats ahead. Okay, so it's more obvious than clever, but you get the idea. But there is a reason why the term experience was used instead of knowledge or wisdom. It's not just something that can be learned. Experience implies involvement. I mean, it's difficult to learn what it's like to go to a foreign country, or know what heartbreak feels like. It's also something that's difficult to teach. And just to complicate matters further, not everyone is going to have the same experiences you do. The common thread about what experience is that it always leaves the sense that you came out more than what you entered with. That experience becomes part of you and your own personal narrative, or you could say it builds character. But what does this have to do with video games? Well, video games can be used to tell a story, and stories were one of the few ways that we can experience events that haven't personally happened to us. There's just something so natural about a narrative arc that we're willing to empathize with and become invested in, to the extent that our most favorite hobbies as humans involve being told some sort of story, and it's been that way for a long time. If prostitution is the world's oldest profession, then storytelling is the world's oldest hobby. Man, this got awkward. And since then, we've told stories through pictures, music, books, theater, radio, television, movies, you name it. Even the internet is just another method we use to tell stories. Creepypasta is similar to campfire tales we told at night just to scare each other. And YouTube comments are wonderful places to find the most evocative stories. But video games are different, and probably the most interesting as a storytelling medium. One that we're just recently starting to explore. Most other methods are just expressly telling or showing you the story. For the viewer, there's no interaction, no sense of agency. The story continues, regardless whether or not the viewer does anything. I'm not saying a good book or movie can't be as immersive as a video game. It's just that a video game expects more from a player than a television show does from the viewer. When done right, a game doesn't feel like it's simply telling you a story. but instead you're actively discovering it. You become immersed in a way that feels more tangible. And that small difference can mean a lot when it comes to a narrative. The fact that you as a player are overcoming challenges could mean that whatever message the game is trying to say could be just as real as a physical experience. And while it certainly isn't a trait that's unique to video games, it's one of the few mediums that regularly use this method. Granted, not every game is trying to tell a story. Sometimes a game is just trying to be a game. It's not like I finished Bubble Bobble saying, "My God, it's right. Been spending all this time playing video games. Should have been making friends instead."
Hello?
Hey Derek, it's SoberDwarf. I was wanting to know if you wanted to meet up and maybe play a game of, I don't know, Mutant League football.
Oh, hell yeah, so long as I can be the team with all the skeletons.
Wait, I thought you didn't want the skeletons to be fighting. I mean, your channel's called Stop Skeletons from Fighting.
Yeah, but they're not fighting. They're playing sports. It's not called Stop Skeletons from Sporting.
Wait, you do know Mutant League football is this game where you...
What, like robots can play sports, but the second some skeletons get on the field, it's like, whoa, break it up, guys. Get real. Bushido Blade.
You used to be so happy. Fine then, I'll just play Bushido Blade. For a long time, games simply had stories to give motivations for your actions. Limitations of hardware and memory meant that saving the world was really the best story we could tell. It wasn't until technology improved that telling a story in video games became more elaborate. Not only is there dramatic cutscenes and voice acting,
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
but there's also player involvement that can change the story itself. And just as a story can be told simply for entertainment and amusement, they can also be told to have you experience something that you would normally never be able to. Games can allow you to be a special forces unit exploring a haunted mansion, or a daimyo trying to unite feudal Japan. And those experiences can be fun. But there are also games that can show you what it's like to be in a war, as the people just trying to survive. These games go against the traditional design of being fun, but instead are meant to share an experience. The most extreme example is That Dragon Cancer. It's a game that gives you the experience of losing a child to cancer. And it's a really hard game to enjoy. And I don't mean that in a way where a game like Resident Evil had unintuitive designs in order to heighten fear but was still kind of fun. I mean, it's a game that exists to remind you that life is sometimes cruel and unfair. It's not exactly an experience we expect when it comes to a medium that's normally about escapism. Instead of challenging or fun, it's painful and heart-wrenching. That doesn't make it a bad game per se. In fact, it's so sad that in a way it's kind of beautiful. Just like a sad song or a movie. But it is a game that's entirely about the experience. You see a lot of this in games that are unaffectionately called walking simulators. Games like The Stanley Parable by Galactic Cafe, or Gone Home by the Fulbright Company. These games have little to no gameplay. Instead, the draw is the game trying to fully immerse you into the experience. Gone Home has its roots firmly placed in early days of point-and-click adventures. The whole point is to find clues in order to discover the reason for your family's strange disappearance. But it doesn't try to be a typical game. There are no enemies or objectives or even much of a heads-up display. It's simply trying to tell a story in its own way. Even narrative-based games such as Telltale's The Walking Dead or Life is Strange from Don't Nod Entertainment are meant to be more about the experience than the gameplay. It's the gaming equivalent to the choose-your-own-adventure style of books that were popular in the 1980s, except the game has advantages that the books don't. Outside of the obvious, like visuals or music, these games can keep track of your decisions to use against you later, give you a time limit on the decisions, and keeps you from going back if you make a decision you didn't quite like. Okay, well, maybe not that last one. Who cares? Why play a game that makes you feel sad? A game's meant to be fun escapism. But then why play games that would make you upset or angry or challenge you? Games aren't just about escapism. People play games for the reason they like to play games. But when gameplay and story work together in order to give you an experience, it's when you see the true potential of games as experience. Probably one of the best examples of this is a game designed by Lucas Pope, the dystopian document thriller, Papers, Please. Chances are you at least heard about this game. But for the uninitiated, allow me to explain the basic concept.
Congratulations! You've won lottery! Your days at Burton Steel Mill are over, comrade! And now you get to start new life in wonderful border city of New Gresham. Enjoy newfound fortune by meeting hundreds of people. Maybe meet sexy lady, yeah? Learn about different cultures. Make friends from Republica or Korea, where they not use toilet paper to wipe ass. Spend money on lavish luxuries. Live in amazing apartments. And live life you could only afford by such wonderful job. Glory to Estotska.
Paid for by the Arstotzka Ministry of Admission. Failure to claim prize may result in punishment, including but not limited to imprisonment, interrogation, and death by firing squad. No purchase necessary. See official rules for details. In Papers, Please, you take the role of a Border Patrol passport inspector in an approximation of a Cold War Eastern Bloc country. Your job, having no choice but to accept it, is to inspect passports at the border. You get paid for each person you process, and you'll need to earn quite a bit in order to feed your relatives and heat your home. At the surface, you'd think similarly to That Dragon Cancer, the game isn't meant to be fun. I mean, they could have named this game Work, the Game, and sold it. But the difference is that the game builds the experience around the gameplay. You aren't just doing paperwork, but you are experiencing something that isn't often explored in games, if at all. Having such a menial job with a vast amount of responsibility, you really see the impact that it has on other people's lives. That experience is essentially the story the game is trying to tell. If the gameplay was literally anything else, that would probably detract from the message the game is trying to convey. To give an example, early in the game, an NPC says he's seeking asylum in Arstotzka, and his paperwork checks out. Right before he leaves your booth though, he mentions his wife who was in a line behind him. Then, this happens. You're forced into this moral decision, but the game isn't explicitly telling you it is a moral decision. You can either deny her or let her in. And if you let her in, the game isn't going to reward you for your altruism. It means that at minimum you're going to get a warning, and that's one person that doesn't count as processed, which translates to less money for food or heat for your family. In fact, you're being punished by even considering your options. The time clock doesn't stop for you. meaning that every minute spent thinking is your livelihood disappearing. But you also understand what a crappy world you exist in. The job that you're doing puts you in the mindset of who your character is. The weight of separating two people, probably people who've had a terrible life, and they're just looking for a sliver of good fortune to finally fall on them. It's hard not to have empathy. You have the option to still be the hero, and that's an internal decision. The game is only going to reward you with a nod and a ticket. Now, for example, let's say this game took place in some alternate dimension where it wasn't based on something so boring. What would Papers, Please even be? Now, if this game was fun in the traditional sense, with the gameplay mechanic being, let's say, solving a short Tetris puzzle, none of this would be relevant. That stress from the menial perfection would be gone, and the role and your motivation would be completely out of character. And this person trying to come in without her paperwork? Yeah! That's what you get for interrupting my Tetris game! You'll be wanting paper in that cell you're gonna be in for a long time! Next! Wait a second. Why aren't I just playing Tetris instead? So, video games can be experiences. So what? Why exactly is that important? Well, it's not. Not everyone is going to look at art the same way. We don't all laugh at the same jokes or cry at the same scenes. Experiences are personal and individualized, and they happen at just the right place at the right time and stick with us for arbitrary reasons. But before we talk more about experiences, first we need to... What? What the... Hello, and welcome to another episode of Here Comes a New Disclaimer. Oh, hello! We here at SoberDwarf are committed to bringing you the most thought-provoking, in-depth discussion about video game design. However, in an effort to provide the best examples, sometimes we take a risk of spoiling a major plot point. That's dry. And while we try to minimize spoilers, sometimes it's impossible to give effective examples without discussing plot-critical topics. If you happen to be sensitive to spoilers, we'd like to inform you that Eris dies! Seriously, if you don't want things spoiled, get off the internet. Well... Obviously, not every game is created with the sole intention of being an experience. In fact, many aren't. Some games are just really great games that happen to have a very relatable story. For example, one of my favorite video games is Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater by Kojima Productions. Released in 2004, it came during a point in my life when I was having an existential crisis of what it meant to be an adult. Instead of trying to accept my responsibility for the rest of my life, I decided to play video games instead. However, I wasn't expecting a game to give me one of the most valuable life lessons I ever learned. If you're only vaguely familiar with Snake Eater, this choice might seem a little weird. I mean, how can a game about this?
Of the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis,
all-out nuclear war,
tank capable of launching nuclear IRBM,
a nuclear holocaust, frequent nuclear tests,
Hornets, President Kennedy's assassination,
a nuclear attack on the United States,
Metal Gear.
Be relatable. Metal Gear Solid on its surface has always been a cautionary tale about war, all the while reminding you how awesome it is to be at war. But what is often missed is the real themes that get obscured behind the motivation. Not surprising, Metal Gear Solid, for example, in its message about nuclear non-proliferation lies a narrative about legacy and destiny. So underneath the Cold War porn of Metal Gear Solid 3 is a story about loyalty and perception. Not even 5 minutes after you first gain control of Snake, the game starts off with this moment between Snake and his mentor, the boss.
There's a saying in the Orient, loyalty to the end. Do you know what it means?
Being patriotic.
It means devoting yourself to your country. People's values change over time, and so do the leaders of a country. So there's no such thing as an enemy in absolute terms. The enemies we fight are only enemies in relative terms, constantly changing with the times. As long as we have loyalty to the end, there's no point in believing in anything, even in those we love.
It's a very poignant and somber conversation that sets up the theme for the entire game. It's not long after that that the boss betrays you and her country. And it feels like that conversation was only there to foreshadow her sudden but inevitable betrayal. The game continues to explore the theme as Snake, and by proxy, you, as you attempt to come up with your own opinion. Every important plot point plays with your ideas of loyalty. Each character is built to show another side of the coin, and each moment is causing you to question or solidify your own beliefs. Then finally, you come to what I consider one of the most emotional endings in a video game. You finally meet the boss, the woman who betrayed her country. Loyalty to the mission, or loyalty to her? Despite how much the game wanted you to villainize her, you can't help but feel the heartbreaking pain of Snake as he's left without a choice but to kill his mentor. However, instead of just showing Snake's decision in a cutscene, the game makes you be the one that pulls the trigger. But that's not the end. The boss, well...
Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. She was a real hero. She was a true patriot.
That's a really heavy lesson to learn, but it was an incredibly important one. I don't want to get too personal, but this story came to me at a time in my life when I was questioning my own beliefs, or to be exact, made me realize I wasn't questioning them enough. It was a video game that made me realize that the people you are told to trust might not have your best interest in mind. And in the end, I was the only one who had to live with those judgments. I can't say with certainty that I would have had the same impression from a book or a movie, but because I was the one leading the events, because the story was happening to me just as much as it was to Snake, I was the one feeling betrayed and confused. It's that story that taught me a lesson that I remember consistently to this very day. This is one of just many personal experiences I've ever had with a video game. However, I figured it would be boring if I only gave you my perspective on something that can be so varied. So, I asked some of my YouTube friends if they would be willing to give their own personal experiences with video games. And what they said surprised even me. So without further delay, everyone, take it away! Yeah, I didn't really have a good way to transition to this.
When Kingdom Hearts hit the States, I was pretty uninterested in Disney movies, aside from a few scenes in Mulan that gave me strange feelings as a child. However, to many, Disney is a symbol of both times gone by and escapism. Final Fantasy and their developer, Square Enix, similarly represented a design philosophy that had gone out of vogue, and a repetitive, if not comforting, art style. And when the plot gets going in Kingdom Hearts, Sora seeks to find his friends and his home. Put all of these elements together, and it becomes clear that this game is about nostalgia. Yet this theme actively clashes against the force that drives the story forward: exploration and personal growth. What this conflict taught me is that nostalgia is a pain that we enjoy, but it can easily prevent us from moving on with our lives if that darkness consumes us. It's all subjective though, and these are just my feelings on Kingdom Hearts. Whatever lies beyond this morning is a little later on. Regardless of warnings, the future doesn't scare me at all. Nothing's like before. Moving on gains experience. Gaining experience builds character.
Being a gamer for most of my 30 years, I've had a lot of games impact my life, but one experience stands far out from the rest. The dark, film noir-inspired tale of Max Payne 2 hit me deep down, almost right from the start. The story about a broken man being pulled through even more anguish and torment was already one of the most well-told, expertly crafted affairs I could have hoped for. But one small, seemingly insignificant moment changed the way that I looked at game characters forever. Early in the game, Max finds that his apartment has been under surveillance, and his every move is being watched. Soon the player is able to find the room where his voyeurs were held up, and in that room there's a small tape recorder, one that's pretty easy to miss. It contains only one phone call, one from Max to a sex hotline.
Thank you for calling Dangerous Liaisons. For Candy, press 1. For Sandy, press 2. For Mona, press 3. You press 3 for Mona. Hi, this is Mona. What's your name?
I just need someone to talk to.
Honey, this is a phone sex line. All we do is talk.
Right. How do you fix something like that? How do you make amends? I thought it would help, but it only made it worse.
Just give me your credit card number and I can listen to you all night.
Killing them all only made it worse. It didn't bring them back.
Hey, what are you, some kind of weirdo?
Sorry.
This conversation alone took Max from a tough-as-nails instrument of revenge to a deeply flawed, grieving man. Because of this small, pathetic moment in Max's life, I saw him almost as a real person, and from then on I expected more from my game characters, less shallow hero traits and more solid, believable motives.
Where do we get our competitive spirit from? And where do we learn to have the will to persevere through any challenges that are put in front of us? As with most things in life, it's often by experience, and oftentimes it's at a very young age that we learn these things. I started gaming at a very young age with the Atari 2600, but it wasn't until I got a Nintendo Entertainment System that gaming got a little tougher. It wasn't until 1989 when I came across a difficult game that was like nothing I ever played with an incredible challenge. And that game was Ninja Gaiden. This game was the first truly difficult game I played as a child. Enemies constantly respawned and came at you from all directions, such as birds, bats, ninjas, and other henchmen. And they often knocked you down to a pit to your death anytime you made contact with them. You had to learn wall jumps and time your attacks correctly. You had to learn the patterns of enemies and bosses. And when you died at the final boss, you had to redo the last 3 stages. The game was relentlessly difficult. The game got under my skin. It caused a lot of saltiness. Of course, that was before salty was what it means now, so we just called it angry, agitated, pissed off, upset, etc. That's what the game did to me, but I still loved it. I still respected the challenge even though I complained. It was that challenge that pissed me off enough to want to beat it. I wanted to beat it and win so badly despite the big challenge. I wanted to persevere through all the crazy challenges and win, and I could gladly say I beat the game as a kid. The satisfaction of persevering through all the difficult challenges of that game was worth it all. It toughened me up and gave me battle scars. The experience I had with that game made me look at video games in a different way. It made me have the strong desire to win. It made me play with more intensity and emotion, and that emotion often comes out as being salty, hence the name of my channel. But that emotion also comes out as excitement and triumph. When I play a video game, I imagine myself in the game and competing against all the enemies and challenges thrown at me, in addition to being competitive when facing human opponents. It made me have the will to persevere through any challenges games threw at me, just as long as those challenges aren't overkill. I'm talking about you, Dark Souls series! And I'm especially talking about Ninja Gaiden 3 without unlimited continues in the Battletoads Turbo Tunnel level. But the point is, that one game, the first Ninja Gaiden, had that effect on my life. And it isn't just for video games. I've had that type of intensity, emotion, perseverance and competitiveness in other aspects of life, such as whenever I played sports. Sometimes all it takes is one thing you experience to have an impact on your life and change the way you see and do things.
One of my all-time favorite video games houses one of my all-time favorite video game memories. The final few minutes of Mega Man 2 not only had a huge impact on me, they are an excellent example of how stark contrast in visuals, audio, and gameplay can build character. It's a moment that comes at a really tense time. So you've come to the final level of Dr. Wily's castle, but upon defeating Wily, the ground breaks beneath Mega Man and reveals the surprise, real final level. The level starts with Mega Man in freefall, something not done anywhere else in the game. As you fall, you realize there is no music. The silence is broken by the echoey sound of droplets landing on the rocks below. A step further reveals many more droplets, and their echoey sound overtakes the NES's sound channels. The sound of Mega Man shooting or landing are completely drowned out. Waiting at the end of the cave is the Doc himself, but for the first time, he appears outside of the confines of a giant machine. He morphs into an alien-like creature and begins flying around a room that appears to be in outer space. You frantically search through every weapon in your inventory and find out that Bubble is the only weapon that does any damage. Of course, it's revealed that Wily is not a flying space monster, but after all that, all bets are off, man, who knows? And then, just when you thought they couldn't do anything more to mess with your head, you are confronted with an incredibly emotional ending, showing what I've always interpreted as the reluctant warrior going home a changed man. Instead of fanfare or celebration, we see Mega Man, crestfallen, or at least in deep thought, cycling through the powers of the robots he's defeated as if carrying the heavy burden of his actions. The melody ends on a somber, emotionally unresolved note in the image of Mega Man's helmet. Holy shit, I was just trying to have a good time jumping and shooting robots. I did not expect to be confronted with the psychological and emotional implications of my actions. This was one of the first times a video game had challenged me from a gameplay perspective and an emotional one. It's an impressive feat for any game, but all the more impressive for an 8-bit NES game. This is why it's held up as one of the greatest games ever made and one of my personal favorites.
So I'll ask the question again. Why are games as experiences important? Well, that's sort of a trick question. It's not that games as experiences are important. It's the fact that the experiences themselves are important, regardless of where you find them. But video games give you that chance to implicitly learn about the world around you and who you are in that world. Or to put it in a way that's far more catchy, gaining experience builds character. Before we roll that end slate though, there is one more experience I'd like to talk about. I've already made one video talking about how much I enjoyed Shadow of the Colossus. It's an amazingly designed game that is as good now as it was 10 years ago. But there's one thing I didn't talk about, and that was the story. The reason you're fighting the Colossi is so that a being who calls himself Dorman can resurrect Mono. It's never really clear if Dorman is an ancient god, a demon who is sealed away in these lands, or something else. It's not often that deals of these sorts ever end up going well, but after each slaying Colossi, you're reminded of why you are fighting, even if you are never told. The reason this works so well is because the player assigns his own meaning to the story. We aren't given much information, so we're left to put the pieces together. How did Mono die? We are told it was from a sacrifice, but for what? Did she sacrifice herself for Wander? Were they lovers, friends, strangers? Is Wander just naive, or does he not really care what happens to him? Or the world for that matter, as long as Mono is saved? And what role does this man play in all this? Is he the villain, or is he the real hero? And again, another spoiler. None of these questions ever get answered. There are so many unanswered questions that could mean it's either brilliant or lazy writing. Regardless, the game allows us to assign our own personal meaning to the game. We answer these questions by what Mono's death means to us, usually in a way that resonates with something that happened in our own lives. Maybe Mono represents a love we've never got to explore, or someone we lost unjustly. Maybe Wander's quest represents a cautionary tale, of accepting fate and what happens when you try to defy it. Or maybe it's our own ambitions and the lengths we're willing to go through just to see them until the end. Much like the game itself, Shadow of the Colossus does a lot with very little. Even I had my own experience with Shadow of the Colossus rather unexpectedly. As I was playing it for footage, I sort of humored to myself the mirror it was holding to my life. I started this channel not knowing what to expect. It was something I put off for way longer than I should have. And it was something that could have ended with Bushido Blade 2. Yet, through the challenges I found encouragement. Each video was this puzzle I was trying to solve, something that took time and effort to complete. And just like each Colossi, each video is similar but also entirely different. A joyous victory followed by a moment of contemplation. You could say that it's been an experience. With that experience has come an appreciation for those who have been doing this long before I published my first video. With that experience have come friendships I never expected to gain, and encouragement I've never had before. With that experience has come a voice that I've been searching for a long time, and with that experience has come a desire to do even more. And I still got plenty of games to talk about and experiences to share. However, I think that's enough for now. So until next time, this is SoberDwarf reminding you that gaining experience...
I'm Dead Palette, and I'm reminding you that gaining experience...
I'm from Mad Salty Gaming, and I'm reminding you the gaming experience.
Hi, I'm Jared from AvalancheReviews, reminding you that gaining experience...
This is Derek from Stop Skeletons from Fighting, reminding you that gaining experience...
Builds character.
Builds character.
Builds character.
Builds character.
Builds character. Thanks for watching. I want to give a special thanks to everyone who helped me collaborate on this episode. That includes Mr. Icart, Dead Palette, Avalanche Reviews, Mad Salty Gaming, and both Derek Alexander and Grace Kramer from Stop Skeletons from Fighting. This video is all the better because of their contributions. So if you'd like to help me thank them, check out their videos that I have posted here. But most of all, thank you for watching. If you'd like, leave a comment describing an experience that you've had with games. This is kind of a personal thing, but I love hearing about how video games create experiences. And you can help me by sharing this video to people you think that might be interested in it, or subscribing if you haven't done that yet. Or resubscribing if YouTube got rid of it. Thanks for watching, I hope to see you in another year of SoberDwarf.